Hello, beautiful souls. My name is Jessie, and welcome back to another episode of Rewire to Inspire. The show where we'll dive into self-love, learn tangible ways to rewire the brain, and discovering your soul's purpose. The goal of Rewire to Inspire is to encourage listeners to begin doing the hard work, to get curious and open to maximizing your life. Our mindset shapes how we live. Depending on life events, traumas, and personal experiences, our mindsets are all vastly different. However, one thing we all have in common is the ability to rewire our mind, to change the narrative, and to pivot our lives. I hope you leave each episode with the belief that you are so worthy to live a life true to you. I look forward to chatting with you every single Tuesday and Thursday and helping you grow exponentially in all areas of your life. Without further ado, here's today's episode. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back for another episode of Rewire to Inspire. I am your host, Jessie Brown, and I am super excited to be jumping on the microphone with you all for episode number 142. I am so excited to be jumping on today with you guys. I just got off of a live with two of my good friends in a private Facebook page for Next Level University, and we chatted about group coaching, our growth journeys, and a little bit how much our lives have transformed over the last couple of years. And it's really just amped me up to want to come on here and share some of that with you. Before we dive into today's episode, hello, you guys. I hope you guys are doing so well. I hope your Julys are off to a phenomenal start. I hope that the sun is shining where you are and that your life is just going great and aligned and that you're feeling gratitude. And sometimes we have to look for things to be grateful for in times where life is a little bit harder and a little bit more challenging. So I hope that this is a reminder for you to just tell yourself one thing you're grateful for each and every day. I promise you it will change your life. I promise you it will make life just that much more beautiful and better. So thank you guys so much for being here. If you missed Tuesday's episode number 141, we did part 2 of reasons why you might not be healing. That has been my favorite podcast episodes to record, I think, ever, because it really holistically snapshots why so many of us kind of take a step back from healing and or avoid it at all costs in general. So if you haven't checked out those 2 episodes, I definitely encourage you to. We go through 15 reasons total why you might not be healing. For today's episode 142, as I just previously mentioned, coming off of that live, one thing that my friend Amy asked me during that live, she said, what pulled you to do group coaching? So to give a little backstory, a lot of my growth journey started in 2021, coming out of the pandemic. I was in a place in my life where I didn't really know what was to come. Reflecting back, I was just going through the motions. I had a job that paid really well. I had an apartment. I was comfortable. Life seemed pretty good. But I knew that I wanted more. I knew I was destined for more. I knew I wanted to give more. I didn't want to just have a 9-to-5 and live your classic life that has been written in stories since the beginning of time. I knew I had deeper purpose in something that I wanted to give back to the world, but I didn't know what it was. And I say that, and I sit here and I say that I knew I always wanted that, but now I'm like, did I really always know that? And I think group coaching was really the first time that I had this light and energy inside of me kind of tell me that I was destined for more. But so I started group coaching in 2021, and it was really the kickstart of my growth journey and of getting new awarenesses, expanding my consciousness, healing myself, etc. And so Amy asked me a question. She said, what really was it that did it for you? What made you say yes? And what would you do? What would you say to anybody right now who's on the fence or curious about doing group coaching? What would you tell them? And I said, a couple of things. The first thing I would say is if you're ever on the fence about something, you're curious about something, you're likely curious for a reason. When we have curiosity, that's likely because a part of us is fascinated about the unknown. If you're curious about something, a part of your higher consciousness is like, hey, this is an alignment for you. Often though, what happens is we have curiosity, but fear takes over. Fear takes over and then we don't try. We block our curiosity. And so we're not able to get new awareness. And so I kind of answered and I said, what if? And that's the title of today's episode. What if it goes better, not worse than you think? What if the next decision you make, choice you make, habit you shift, thing you heal, what if the next thing that you say yes to is going to completely transform your life? We have this negative narrative that plays in our mind that I've talked about infinite times on this podcast, right? We are designed to focus on the negative, outcome, because our mind likes to make sure it's playing itself safe. It wants to keep you safe. But what I told Amy and what I want to tell you guys is, what if it goes better than you could have ever imagined? Looking back now, I'm like, what if I hadn't done group coaching? What if I hadn't said yes to me? What if I hadn't started my podcast? What if I hadn't started coaching? What if I hadn't said yes to certain things in my life? I would not be where I am right now. And the same plays true in your life. What if you are one yes away from living a completely different life? What if you are one choice away from having a completely different life? And today's episode is going to be a little bit shorter because I want this to be more of a contemplation, question, curiosity, mindset shift for you guys listening. Because I know what it's like to sit in that contemplation stage and to stir in negative thoughts, to spiral there, to stay stuck, to stay stagnant. But what if your life could look completely different? I had a conversation with my client yesterday, and she kind of opened up to me about how she has a fear of setting goals because she self-identifies herself as somebody who is inevitably going to miss, is inevitably going to fail. And in her consciousness, that makes her a failure, that makes her less than. And in her words, that makes her different than everybody else. And so I asked her, I said, who do you find yourself comparing to the most? Because we often subconsciously have something, some idea, some expectation in which we compare ourselves to. And she kind of started listing off names. And I was one of those names that she said she compared herself to. And I said, okay, I want to show you something. And I pulled up a picture of me a couple years ago and then a picture of me now. There's a side by side on my Facebook. And I said, that version of Jessie on the left used to have a lot of similar mindsets and narratives and identities of what you just told me. And I said, do you want to know what's interesting though? The only way that I got from that version to this version, and the only way that I'm going to get to this version to the next level version of myself, is by failing, is by asking myself, what if? And it is by trying. I've done numerous episodes on here about failing forward, about trying, about learning from your mistakes. Because the thing is if we don't even try, you're never going to get new awareness. Without new awareness, you will not contemplate. Without contemplation, you will not grow. Without growth, you will stay stagnant. I want to remind all of you guys the power and significance of asking yourself, what if it goes better than you could have ever imagined? I did an episode early on in my podcast, and it was all about how would you show up differently if you knew you couldn't fail? If you knew failure was not an option, how would you show up differently? Now, again, I view failure as a very positive thing, depending what you learn from it. If you ask yourself, what if I try this thing and it goes worse than I could have ever imagined? Okay. Then what is your response to that? Is your response to that to analyze it, to learn from it, to see what went wrong so that you can try again and do it right? Or are you someone that when you fail, you throw in the towel and you're like, okay, that's it? If you've been someone who's done this time and time again in your life, I encourage you to ask yourself, what could happen if you decided to shift that? If you decided to learn from your mistakes, decided to learn from your failures and embrace them, and knowing that failure is inevitably a part of taking on anything new in your life. And just as I shared with this client, I might be sitting here in front of you looking like I have it all together, I have it all figured out, that I'm leagues ahead of you. I said, do you want to know the biggest difference between you and me? I was willing to fail more than you are. I'm willing to fail more than you are. I'm willing to mess up, to learn from it, and to show up again tomorrow and try again. That is the only difference between us. And yes, we all have different abilities, different quantum abilities, different talents, different genius zones, different things. But a talent is really only a talent as much as we put reps in and we highlight it. You might not even know what your unique genius zone talents are because you've never been willing to try and see what happens. I want to throw this in here because when I was asked that question, I was like, what would I have needed to hear 2 years ago when I was in that contemplation state? It is, what if it turns out better than you could have ever imagined? I encourage you to think of an area of your life right now that you've been curious about taking a leap of faith. You've been curious about learning more on. You've been curious about finding out more, about trying, about maybe showing up, about maybe doing it. And I want you to ask yourself, what is the worst case scenario? But what is the best case scenario? How could your life look completely different in a year's time if you were to start? And here's the other thing. I think so many of us think that because we don't see immediate results and that they're only in the future, well, what's the point? But wouldn't you so much rather set your future self up for an aligned life that you know you work towards than just avoiding things out of fear and out of a time perspective? What I mean by that is so many of us are like, if we don't have that instant result, why would we try? Why would we do it? Without realizing that we will inevitably continue to get better if we continue to show up. Your life can and will look completely different in a year's time, but only if you're willing to do the things to get you there, aligning the things to get you there. Time is inevitably going to pass. It's going to continue to keep going. The question is, are you utilizing it and using it for your own benefit? Are you using it to set your future self up? And I don't even want to say for success. I want to say for alignment. Are you aligning your life now for the future that you desire? And that is what is going to be unique to each and every one of us. This what if question is going to be unique to each and every one of you, depending what it is. We all have different goals and different desires in life. Just because I'm striving for a global impact does not mean that you have to be striving for the same thing. Comparison is a great thing when we're learning from it, but it is a toxic thing when we tell ourselves that we could never become like somebody else. I had to tell my client that. I had to say, it is great that you are looking up to all of us. I encourage you to continue to look up to us, don't downplay yourself so much that you are unwilling to take action because you're comparing your day 1 to our year 3, year 4, year 5, year 20. Everything has to start somewhere. Everything has to have a beginning. But if your beginning is just a constant push to the future, you will continue to lag getting results, lag getting awareness that could cultivate a completely different life for you in maybe less time than you realize. Awareness is always inevitably going to be happening. Knowing and trusting in the process and knowing and trusting that you will likely thank yourself more for doing the things that you're curious and passionate and driven to do than by avoiding out of fear of what could go wrong. So that is my question for you today on this Thursday. Love is, what if that thing you've always wanted, that thing you're curious about, that thing you're passionate about, what if it actually goes better than you could have ever imagined? And what if your mind is just trying to keep you safe? And what if all the factors in your life are just mirroring that belief, reiterating a belief? The only way that you can change that and begin to shift that is by quieting it, by taking action. messy action, failing forward, and learning from your mistakes. So thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode of Rewire to Inspire. I know it was a quicker episode today. If you're looking for support in aligning your life, setting up your life, looking at your past, how it's driving your future, setting up a clear future, reach out. I offer one-on-one trauma-informed coaching, and I would absolutely love to work with you, love to connect with you, love to chat with you to see how we can get your life to the next level and begin to align your life in a way that is actually going to serve your future self. So thank you guys so much as always. I look forward to chatting with you all next week. Bye, you guys. Thank you all so much for tuning into today's episode of Rewire to Inspire. I absolutely love connecting with you all, so make sure you're following me on Instagram. I am at Jessie Brown 13. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to leave a review or share with someone you think would enjoy. I look forward to chatting with you all next episode. And remember, get out of your head and into your heart.